For years now, we've been discussing how do we look at the access issues in relation to Montserrat. Today we want to look principally at the sea access and the additional approvals which have been provided. We're now looking at moving at a larger vessel, a more functional vessel in relation to being able to cover the distance more comfortably in a shorter period of time. We clearly have to look at developing a marketing and promotional strategy, double destination or the multi-destination tourism elements with Antigua, St Kitts and Nevis, and also to include Guadeloupe. It's rather interesting to note that American Airlines has today announced that they're doing direct flights into Guadeloupe as well. We have to look at being more effective and efficient in terms of bookings and handling of passengers. We have to be in a position to show to the authorities in Antigua that a passenger who has booked from London to Antigua, because they can't do bookings directly into Montserrat, do actually have through connections to Montserrat. And as a consequence, we now have to look at online bookings and online ticket sales for the ferry service and for the flight services coming into Montserrat. That's critically important. We also have to review, rationalize, and improve the way we do business in relation to the agencies that operate the ferry. So we will now be looking at retendering with new terms of reference for the ferry operators, that is the ground handlers, both in Montserrat and Antigua. And one niggling point with Antigua is that the ferry terminal at Heritage Quay, or Bryson's Pier as I like to call it, that we must ensure that that facility becomes operational almost immediately. We've had a project at Lookout for the Lookout School improvement. We have finally gotten the approval of DFID to repackage the project to include the equipment for both buildings, which was not included in the original project. Put in place a different management system for the project so that we can deliver proper facility within the new time frame as established. The project implementation unit is managing that project on behalf of government, but we're also putting in place other management systems to be able to focus on delivering that and other projects on time and within cost.
Thank you, Premier. I think you've covered most of the issues that we were most interested in, particularly the debate about ongoing access arrangements and the suitability of the ferry, and critically in how we can help jumpstart not only the tourism sector but the entire economy in Montserrat. One thing that people must note is that the intervention on access is just a short-term intervention which is building into the longer-term decision on either the purchase of the ferry or entering into a public-private sector arrangement on a purpose-built ferry for Montserrat. The reason I say that it's a short-term issue is that, at the same time as we've done this approval, we are going ahead as part of the SGP to do all the work required to get to that decision point on the long-term ferry. But also it's critical that the short-term ferry demonstrates both to, the government of Montserrat here, but also to the UK government, that the investment in the long-term ferry is one that would be sustainable, because you use the short-term arrangement with an improved ferry service to build up the demand, as well as to open up the routes, test those routes and see, the suitability of those various services. So we think that this is just a stepping stone to the more long-term solution to Montserrat's access issues. The conditions the Premier has outlined are very, very important, because we think that not only just simply making an additional investment in improving access to Montserrat is just a start, but we need to improve how we facilitate, but also how we market that service. And facilitation requires using the technology that's available. Online booking is critical, and how we use that service to facilitate people. I think those of you who remember in December, when during the 50th festival, hundreds of Montserratians came back, or should I say thousands, because it actually was thousands who came back. There were long queues in Antigua, particularly in trying to process them. We have to address that, and this is where we think we can use technology to do it. Those of you who have seen the Montserrat online visa system understand how that technology has worked, and everybody thinks that that is an ideal platform that we can copy, essentially, when we are building out an access website that will provide those types of services, working with various partners within government. On the Lookout School, I think we are glad that this intervention has happened, particularly given that we had reached a point where the DFID decision was either we end this project or until we could find a solution. And I'm glad that, working together with the government of Montserrat, we've come to some sort of an understanding. They've gone away, they've produced a proposal which looks at revamping, not only refurbishing the old school, that looks at providing additional fixtures and fittings within the new buildings that are going to be built, as well as completing Building 6, which was the outstanding building. So we think the proposals that was sent to us was an ideal proposal that we thought, okay, we'll provide some additional funding so that we can get this project finished. We need to remember that the reason we're doing all this is because of the young people in Montserrat, and to make sure that those services are available to them in the first instance on the first week of the semester in September of 2013. That's when phase 1 of this phase will be complete, and then the second one will be at the end of 2014. So within the next 7-8 months, the refurbishment should be finished, and then the Building 6 should be completed a year later.
I think this is wonderful news for Montserrat. It gives young people the opportunity to access new services, particularly around the new IT classroom, library, sports hall and changing rooms. So I think it's wonderful news for Montserrat. It's good that it be ready for the next academic year, and I think DFID has obviously shown its continued support to Montserrat in that area.